In this video, we are going to talk about something that touches the lives of many older adults in America: the quiet ache of feeling forgotten after giving so much. For decades, you worked hard, raised children, and sacrificed your own needs, believing the later years would bring peace, family gatherings, and gratitude. But for many, reality feels different. Instead of busy homes filled with laughter, there are long days of silence. Instead of constant phone calls from children, there are weeks that pass without hearing their voices. And sometimes, the people you gave everything to no longer see you the way they once did. I want to share with you a story that reflects this truth. It is about Martha, a woman who poured her whole life into her family. She believed her sacrifices would be remembered and that her later years would be filled with love and comfort. But what she discovered was loneliness, distance, and the painful feeling of becoming invisible. Her story is not just about struggle, it is also about courage, rediscovering herself, and finding peace in a new way. And maybe, as you listen, you will recognize parts of your own journey too. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or state in the comments below. 1. The loss. Martha always believed her later years would be spent with her husband by her side. She imagined the two of them sitting together on the porch in the evenings, sharing quiet conversations as the sun went down. She thought about simple dinners at the kitchen table, weekends filled with her son's laughter, and a future where the sacrifices they had made would finally bring comfort. But life often surprises us in ways we never expect. One ordinary day, her husband went to work and never came back. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just the loss of a partner. It was the loss of a future they had built in their minds for so many years. When the news came, Martha felt as though the ground had been pulled from under her feet. The payout she received from the company was small, almost insulting. After decades of her husband's hard work, everything was reduced to a single check that couldn't even cover the cost of keeping their home secure. Along with grief came an overwhelming fear of how to carry on. She still had a teenage son in high school, bills to pay, and a house that suddenly felt far too big and too quiet. Every corner reminded her of what she had lost. The kitchen table where they used to share stories now sat empty. The porch, once a place of peace, became unbearable. Even walking into their bedroom felt like reopening the wound again and again. She carried on because she had to, because her son still needed her. She pushed her pain aside to keep life moving forward. But in those long nights when the house was silent, the weight of loneliness pressed down harder than ever. For Martha, the hardest part wasn't just losing her husband, it was the loss of the security and comfort that their future together promised. And this is something many older adults understand too well. It's not only the absence of the person you love, but also the loss of the life you believed was waiting for you. Suddenly, the future feels empty, and each day becomes a question of how to keep going when everything has changed. 2. The sacrifice. After losing her husband, Martha's world could have easily fallen apart, but she didn't allow herself that choice. She still had her son, and for him, she was determined to stay strong. Like many parents, she knew what sacrifice meant. She cut corners everywhere she could, stretched every dollar, and worked tirelessly so that her son would never feel the full weight of their struggles. While her heart carried grief, her hands carried responsibility. When her son finished high school and wanted to move to the city, Martha faced another painful choice. Her heart longed to keep him close, to have the comfort of his presence in the same house. But she didn't want to hold him back. She encouraged him to follow his dreams, even though it meant her own evenings would grow lonelier. Before he left, she pressed money into his hands, money she had saved for months by denying herself small comforts. It was her way of telling him, "Go and build the life you want. I'll be fine." Later, when he called and asked for help buying a small apartment, she gave him everything she had left. The only financial security she had, the payout from her husband's accident, was placed in his future, not hers. She told herself it was for both of them, that one day he would bring her to live with him, and they would share in his new life together. That belief gave her comfort, even when her own cupboards were bare. For Martha, sacrifice wasn't just about money. It was her time, her energy, her very sense of self. She gave without keeping score. She gave because that's what love does. And she told herself it was enough simply to see her son happy. But deep down, like so many parents, she hoped that one day he would look back and truly understand how much she had given. Because every dollar, every sleepless night, every choice to put herself second carried not just effort, but pieces of her hope and her trust. 3. The invisible mother. For many older adults, one of the deepest pains is not the aches of the body or even the struggles with money. It's the slow, quiet feeling of becoming invisible to the very people you love most. In the beginning, children call often, they visit, they share their lives, and it feels like the bond you worked so hard to build will last forever. But then, almost without noticing, the calls become shorter, the visits come less often, and you start to realize that the space between you and them is growing wider with each passing year. This was Martha's reality. At first, her son's weekly calls filled her with pride and comfort. She loved hearing about his new job, the busy city life, and the excitement of his future. Those conversations reminded her that she still had a place in his world. But slowly, those calls stopped coming regularly. Sometimes he picked up when she called, sometimes he didn't. And when he did answer, she could hear in his voice that he was distracted, eager to get back to his life. To bridge the gap, she did what so many mothers do. She found little ways to show love. She baked cookies and mailed them, believing that even a small taste of home might remind him of her. She knitted socks for the winter and tucked in notes that said things like, "Stay warm," or "Don't skip meals." Sometimes she even sent small amounts of money, though she didn't have much to spare. For her, these weren't just gifts. They were proof that she was still his mother, still thinking of him every single day. But the harshest moment came when she discovered her son was getting married, not through his voice, not through a happy call, but through a neighbor's slip of the tongue. Imagine how that would feel, hearing news of your own child's wedding from someone else. Martha went quietly, dressed in her best clothes, and sat at the very back of the chapel. She watched him exchange vows, but not once did he look her way. And in that moment, she felt what so many seniors have felt before, that painful mix of love and invisibility. To be present, yet unseen. 4. The betrayal. For many older adults, it's not only the absence of attention that wounds the heart, it's when years of sacrifice seem to be dismissed, as if they no longer count for anything. That's exactly what Martha experienced. The day she found out she was a grandmother should have been one of the happiest moments of her life. A new baby in the family, her first grandchild, a milestone every parent dreams about. But instead of a phone call from her son, she heard it through a casual comment from a neighbor. No photo, no message, not even a word from the very child she had given everything to. Shaken, Martha picked up the phone, hoping it was all a mistake. But when the line connected, it wasn't her son who answered, it was her daughter-in-law. The voice on the other end was cold, almost impatient. Martha forced a smile into her words as she said, "I just heard about the baby. I didn't know."
The reply was sharp, almost dismissive. "We've been busy. Jacob has a lot going on. We didn't have time to update everyone." Trying to hold back her pain, Martha whispered, "I could have helped. I would have been there." But instead of gratitude, what she received was a cutting response. "If you really want to help, you can come take care of the baby. We need someone during the week. But if you're too old to do that, then maybe you shouldn't expect anything from us." Those words sank like a stone in her heart. In that moment, she realized she was no longer seen as a mother or even as a grandmother. She was being measured only by her usefulness, by what she could still give. Everything she had already given, her love, her money, her years, was treated as if it no longer mattered. This is a pain many older parents know too well. To feel reduced to being helpful or a burden instead of being valued for who you are is one of the cruelest betrayals. For Martha, this was her breaking point. The day she understood that her worth in their eyes had been rewritten, not as family, but as someone to be used or ignored. 5. The turning point. After that phone call, Martha sat in silence for a long time. The words echoed in her mind. "If you're too old to help, then maybe you shouldn't expect anything from us." It was as if her whole life of sacrifice, her years of love, her endless giving, had been erased in a single sentence. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. Instead, something inside her shifted. For the first time, she asked herself a question she had avoided her whole life. What about me? For days, she moved through her house like a shadow. She stopped checking the phone every hour, waiting for a call that never came. She stopped preparing care packages that always went unacknowledged. She even stopped holding on to the routines that revolved around someone else's life. The silence, which once broke her, began to open her eyes. She realized she had spent decades living for others, first her husband, then her son, and yet no one seemed to be living for her. That hurt, but it also sparked something powerful. She was not just a mother. She was not just someone's backup plan. She was still a woman with dignity, with worth, and with the right to peace. And so she made the boldest decision of her life. Martha sold the farmhouse. The home that once held laughter and dreams now carried only loneliness and painful reminders. Packing up was not easy. Every photograph, every corner of the house felt like saying goodbye all over again. But with each box she sealed, she felt a little lighter. With the money from the sale, she began searching for a small apartment in town, something simple, something that was hers. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about survival, and more than that, it was about self-respect. For Martha, this was the turning point. Not a dramatic moment, but a quiet one. She finally chose herself. And that's a lesson so many older adults need to hear. It is never too late to make that choice. No matter how many years have passed, you still have the right to put yourself first.
The rebirth. Starting over later in life can feel impossible. Many older adults believe change belongs only to the young, that once you've reached a certain age, your story is already written. But Martha's life proved otherwise. Her new beginning didn't come from money or from her son suddenly returning to her life. It came from one powerful decision: to live differently. Her apartment was small, just one bedroom with a narrow kitchen and thin walls where she could hear her neighbors' footsteps. But to her, it felt like freedom. Unlike the old farmhouse, it wasn't filled with memories that pressed down on her chest. It wasn't haunted by silence. It was fresh, clean, and hers. For the first time in many years, she woke up without the weight of waiting for someone else to remember her. She built small routines that gave her strength. In the mornings, she walked to the local church where she had found work cleaning. The pay was modest, just enough to cover groceries and bills, but the work gave her structure. She mopped floors, dusted pews, and sometimes sat in the back row before leaving, not always to pray,
but simply to breathe, to feel alive, and to remind herself that she was still here. At home, she planted herbs on her windowsill, watered them daily, and smiled when the first leaves appeared. On Fridays, she bought herself flowers, a small luxury but a powerful reminder that she deserved beauty too. In the evenings, she made herself tea and savored it slowly, no longer waiting by the phone for a call that never came. At first, the silence was sharp, but soon she realized it was no longer her prison, it was her freedom. This was Martha's rebirth, not the life she once dreamed of, but a life she created with her own hands. A life of quiet dignity, little joys, and peace that came not from others, but from within. And that's a truth many older adults forget. It doesn't matter how old you are, it is never too late to begin again. Martha's story may sound unique, but in reality, it is the story of so many older adults across America. After decades of hard work, sacrifice, and love, too many seniors find themselves overlooked in the very years they thought would finally bring rest. Some lose their partners, some lose their savings, and many sit in homes that have grown too quiet, waiting for phone calls or visits that never come. That waiting, that silence, can make you feel like you no longer matter. But Martha's journey shows something powerful. She lost her husband. She gave everything she had to her son. She faced the deep pain of being forgotten. Yet even in that loneliness, she discovered something important. She still had herself, and that was enough to start again. By choosing to leave behind what no longer served her, she found peace in her own way. Her story is a reminder that dignity does not come from how others treat you. It comes from how you choose to see yourself. Even if people overlook you, even if they fail to show gratitude, your worth remains. You carry wisdom, you carry strength, and your life still has meaning. If you are listening right now and you feel invisible, let Martha's story be a light for you. You are not broken. You are not a burden. You are a person with value, with stories that matter, and with the right to peace in your later years. It is never too late to begin again. You can create small joys, find new routines, and choose to live for yourself. So the next time you feel invisible, remember this: you are not. Your presence matters, your story matters, and your life, even now, can hold peace, dignity, and meaning, just as Martha discovered for herself.